Okay.
Hi guys, I'm Lady Falana, CEO and founder of Endure Entertainment. When you think of clean entertainment, think of Endure Entertainment. When you think of Endure Entertainment, think of clean entertainment. The Endure Entertainment television personalities, we are the A-Team. We're more than just a team, we're family. Look at all of the different syndicated podcast directories we are on. Go ahead and download those apps so you don't miss our shows on the go. Endure Entertainment LLC started October 2021. Now we're in 17 countries outside of the United States. Featured in CBS, Fox, and NBC. Gospel Choice Music Awards nominated for Independent Broadcast Network of the Year. We do more than just TV. We also do virtual concert extravaganzas. Our last one this past January was off the chain. You can look at our shows, virtual concert, and TV 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at endureentertainment.live. Radio. Next coming up is going to be the radio station of the year on Endure Entertainment. Ever thought about having your own show, television, radio? Would you like to get some exposure with your radio edited version of your performing artistic abilities? Take a look at Endure Entertainment.
All right, one more, and then I'll be right with you.
Author, evangelist Corey Thomas, a dedicated servant leader whose weapons are spiritual in nature and volatile in impact. Hot off the press, author, evangelist Corey Thomas's new book, Sound Advice, Music and the Battle for Your Mind, Body, and Soul. Matthew 5:13, ye are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost his flavor, wherewith shall it be salted? It's author, evangelist Corey Thomas's new book, Sound Advice, Music and the Battle for Your Mind, Body, and Soul. Purchase your copy to help maintain that flavor in your spiritual walk. This book is epic. It's sold on every major online bookstore or go to CoreyThomasMinistries.com. I got my copy. Be sure to get yours. It's author, evangelist Corey Thomas's new book, Sound Advice, Music and the Battle for Your Mind, Body, and Soul. Get your copy today.
All right. Now it's me. Welcome. Sorry I wasn't here last week. I've been so buried in schoolwork, which is actually, I'm going to brag on me for a second, turned out quite fruitful. I don't know if you could see that. Academic achievement. I am on the Dean's list now, which was, truly, it feels good because I worked my tail off for it. And this secondary to that is, I always keep in the back of my mind that I shouldn't be here right now. By the grace of God, I am here, and I'm here to talk about addictions and coping and mental health issues and things like that. So, before we go on tonight, I wanted to mention that I'm going to be using, this is a lot of it's from my own experience, but a lot of it too is I like to back up the things that I say because I study feverishly to not just to prove a point, but to add some legitimacy to it, so that it's just not, so I'm not a walking opinion piece. Because my deal in this with Jesus is to just spread the word about the truth. I'm not trying to do anything more, anything less than that, because I have to be grateful, and I always will be. I mean, I've gone from a 3% chance of living to perfectly fine, and that's pretty amazing journey if you ask me. So going on from there, hey V. What I wanted to get into is I was reading this Harvard health study, and this is from Dr. Peter Grinspoon. I've never heard that name. Dr. Peter Grinspoon there has been through rehab himself, and he kind of gets it, and he kind of has the same questions and that I do, and except he's researched his answers, and again, he is a actual medical doctor. Um, I am not. Um, Hopefully, by the end of the year, I'll be a psychologist, or next year, or whenever. And Godspeed, right? All right. So, first thing I wanted to get into, just get right into it. You hear this all the time as people say, there's a addictive personality, and I haven't agreed with this for a while, and there's good reason for that. Because there's no such thing as an alcohol gene, or that's the one that I always hear. You inherited that alcohol gene, and I can go on that again. But I don't need to tonight. I will just tell you there's no such thing. There is no gene they can link scientifically to and biologically to alcohol use disorders. So we'll look at it this way, and I'll give you a little bit more about Dr. Peter Grinspan here. He says, I'm now 11 years into recovery from my battle with opiate addiction. And I have always been fascinated with two related questions. Is there truly such thing as an addictive personality, and do people substitute addictions? Um, so he says right here, it's the myth of addictive personality. Can a person who was addicted to drugs or alcohol in their teens safely have a glass of wine with dinner in their middle age? And as he says here, it really does depend on which model of addiction and recovery you're looking at. It's so generic when you go out there right now. You go from rehab to rehab to rehab, and you're going to get the same 12-step process, except they'll twerk it a little bit to make it into their own monetary gain. Hey, this is the way the Ridge in Lexington, Kentucky does it. This is the way Isaiah House does it out past Nicholasville, Kentucky. This is the way Revive does it in Nicholasville, Kentucky. And further on, go out through the state, go to ARC in Greensboro, North Carolina, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And you get the same thing. They all call it what they do, and that's their program. It's not. It was a program developed in the 1930s by, let's say, the co-founder Bill W. And not really. Not many people have wanted to change it or question that or say, okay, if this program's so good, why are there so many people on the ground? And that is something that I do. That's what got me into psychology. And uh, my major thing when I was thinking about this and going through this, I had a lot of time to think when I was healing. From 115 pounds being bedbound, you get a lot of personal time. So, um, with that said, when I was thinking about it, to make any kind of logical sense for all addicts to be the same, we would all have to have the same background, the same genetic makeup, the same predispositions, the childhood dramas and diagnoses of, he even has it right here, depression and anxiety. Then he says it as well. So I'll give you his. Um, he says during his 90 days in rehab, it was forcefully impressed upon him that addictions are routinely substituted, and that if one is ever addicted to any substance, then lifelong abstinence from all potentially addictive substances is the only hope of salvation. But he goes on to say everyone would have to have the same lifelong predispositions to an addiction, genetic makeup, childhood traumas, depressions, all of which would plausibly set them up to become addicted to, let's say, alcohol. Okay, that makes sense. What you do, okay, mesolimbic dopamine system, that's a reward system in the brain. So you would have to say that alcohol and heroin and let's say cocaine are all going through the same pathway, and that's your pleasure and your reward system. So it's I'm going to quote him on this one because it comes out much more eloquently. So it is logical that the body might try to find a second pathway to satisfy these hungry neurotransmitters if the first one is blocked. And that's what is called a cross addiction. Um, is that truthful? A lot of people say it all the time. Now, and he mentions here, which is something, I mean, this is, I just read this today, so it rehashes some things that I've said, which is not patting myself on the back. It's just adding to it that I'm not the only one there saying, this is not the only way, this is not the only path. And this fake it till you make it mentality is not going to work. Um, it doesn't work. I mean, your chances of surviving with just treating the addiction, just treating the detox, your chances of making it out, as they like to say, into the recovery world. Let's not say out, because if you're out there, that means you're out there. That means you're using. Um, are very slim. I mean, if you're not going to, let's say my usual, if you're not going to a meeting a day and or therapy a day, that 12-step program is designed to fail. You're fed with all this about the cross addiction, so on and so on, and that an addict is an addict is an addict is an addict. Um, and again, that's not necessarily true. And he says, while he was in rehab, I was actually told a lot of other things that turned out to have no basis in scientific evidence. For example, I was told on a daily basis that a drug is a drug. The mentality doesn't allow for there being a difference between, for example, the powerful opiate fentanyl, which kills thousands of people a year, and buprenorphine, Suboxone. I should have said that, which is widely accepted treatment for opioid use disorder. I will say this: I don't. With Suboxone and a paper I wrote last semester. Suboxone is it depends on the program you're using. You know, everybody likes to say, okay, we've got a MAT program, but how regulated is that MAT program? That means medical assisted treatment. Okay, so if somebody's getting Suboxone, Suboxone is sold on the streets now as well, and some people abuse it. I mean, it's just the way it goes. It needs to be used with treatment and under a doctor's care basically the entire time. Like I always say, I know people who've been addicted 12 and 20 years to Suboxone. Now, flat out tell you that they're addicted to Suboxone and they wish they could stop. And that's okay. I mean, would I rather somebody be taking Suboxone or fentanyl? Absolutely Suboxone. Um, and again, it makes sense. But with anything, it doesn't matter what it is. There's people who abuse coffee. There's people. I don't need to go into that. So he says, I've come to believe that an uncompromising abstinence only model is a holdover from the very beginning of the recovery movement almost 100 years ago, and our understanding has greatly evolved since then. The concepts of addiction and recovery that made sense in 1935 when Alcoholics Anonymous was founded and which have been carried on by tradition might not still hold true in the modern age of neurochemistry and functional MRIs. That said, mutual help groups today do have a place in some people's recovery. And granted, right there when he says some people, it's not for everyone. That same program does not work for everyone. It's it turns it into a group think and a polarization where you have to be just like the person sitting next to you. And, when you go into a meeting, they're going to tell you, that everybody comes from a different background and so on and so on. Yeah, I get it. But then you still pigeonhole issues a lot of times. And it's just an archaic way of thinking. And again, I'm not the only person that goes this way with it because when you go into the title of this tonight, the difference between recovery and recovery is when you're going to stay in recovery for the rest of your life. It's considered okay. you're in remission, but you still got that alcoholic gene or addict gene in you that's gonna, flare up at any moment. And that really depends on your mentality mindset. And I'm not here selling anything. This is advice I give for free. And you don't have to be in recovery for a lifetime. You can be recovered, but you have to be willing to be recovered. This is like going to an old what would I call it? I don't know, a revival, but you're healed, Benny Hinn, um, type thing. If you're going to get upset, and every time you get upset, you're going to have the mindset of saying this was, so much easier to deal with life when I was, getting messed up and so on and so on. You're going to stay that way. And it's just the way it is. Where is that? Okay. One study published in the Journal of American Medicine showed that in 2014, as compared with those who do not recover from substance use disorder, people who recover have less than half the risk of developing a new SUD or substance use disorder. Contrary to clinical lore, meaning myth, achieving remission does not typically lead to drug substitution, but rather is associated with a lower risk of new substance use disorder onsets. This is debatable. Um, this goes back to, is a drug a drug? If I was physically addicted to alcohol, and does that mean I could never, for lack of a better term? Oh no, I got a better term. Does that mean I could never smoke marijuana even if it was medically prescribed to me? No, it doesn't. It's a mindset, and the substitution thing's a myth too. But it's so ingrained in there that it's a messy, man. It's a messy topic. Um, but again, it's important when I said at the beginning there with you just don't. Everybody doesn't have the same background, the same biological makeup. I mean, the same traumas, the same depressions, the same anxieties. You would have to be all one individual for it to for the 12 steps to make sense for everyone. And again, that's not saying that the 12 steps are a bad thing. It's saying I know for me it didn't work. And that's just the truth, and I'll later on explain what worked to me. um, and he goes into here. Okay. The study in the Journal for American Medicine, um, the authors of the study suggest that factors such as coping strategy skills, and motivation of the individuals who recover from a substance use disorder may protect them from the onset of a new substance use disorder. In other words, by making the life affirming transition from addicted to recovered, we gain recovery toolboxes that help us navigate life's challenges and stress. Okay. Thus, when faced with stressful situations that formerly would trigger us to drink or drug, we might respond by exercising or calling a friend rather than using a substance. Man, I cannot hardly talk tonight. Sorry. All right. As such, we substitute addictions with healthier activities that perform the function that the drink or drug used to. Honestly, I do a lot of that, whether it be Xbox controller or the guitars back there. I've learned to play guitar. I do Legos and stuff when I'm stressed out. I take a bath, candles, meditate, pray. I do a lot of all that, and it has worked fantastically for me. I mean, I know that I'm a different person than I used to be, and I can't point it out, but um, I'm not tempted. I don't get triggered. Um, And there's a reason for that. And I've been searching for the reason for that. And it is because I've faced it that, I mention this all the time that I just suck at drinking, which is true. I was hiding things or bearing things deep inside that were very, very traumatic to me. And finally facing them it lifted a lot of that away from me. And I no longer feel like, if I had a bad day or if somebody made me mad, that I have to go, grab a drink. And I always mention, I never drank to catch a buzz or have a good time. I drank to get drunk. And that's the truth of the matter on that one. And it always will be. Um, so I was not mentally well enough to consume alcohol. And that is the truth of the matter. It doesn't matter to me what anybody else is telling me, how I should feel, how I should think, what I should do. I know what happened. I know exactly what happened with me. I was there. I live in this body, and I was there when God lifted me up off that floor. And, you know, I got my salvation and able to be grateful and the restored faith that I was missing. My number one diagnosis should have not been alcoholic when it should have been loss of God. And I once went to a rehab, and that's what I told them when I initially went in. One of the problems that's wrong with me is I've completely lost my relationship with God along the way, and that was so much truth. But instead, I was treated for addiction. Look, addiction is, and there's a lot of people who believe this. There's a lot of people who are going to argue it. It doesn't matter. Addiction is, to me, a symptom of a larger issue inside of you that needs to be examined. And a lot of people like to call addiction a disease. I don't. A lot of only 11% of the medical community in the U.S. will call it a disease. Um, but you hear from the loudest ones that wanted it and do want it called a disease. Um, you really do, because that went along with the AA module when it started up, and that was a big part. AA was a big part of getting classified as a disease. You know, do I not think it's debilitating? No. It's tough. I went through it, and once you go so far, it's like the author Hunter S. Thompson once said, once you cross that edge, you're the only one that really knows what it's like. And it's the truth, because I became physically addicted to alcohol, which is a miserable experience. From nearly shaken to death. I couldn't hold a pen. I couldn't hold a fork to eat if I hadn't had a drink yet. And when you detox, you have hallucinations, you have seizures, which I've had a bunch of. This hallucinations, I've had a bunch of, and that's nothing to brag about. I mean, I had one seizure in 2008 that put me in a coma for a few months, and I didn't learn my lesson then, and I haven't talked about this in a long time. But when I got past that, I was supposed to die. I developed what's called acute respiratory distress syndrome, and it's I think 95% mortality rate, 85% mortality rate. That means you got a 15% chance of living. So somehow, some way, I made it through there, and they had told my sister in the beginning to go ahead and make arrangements to put me in a convalescent home or plan a funeral, because it's going to be one of the two things, basically. And I came back from that. But when I came back from that, was I grateful? No. I turned that into, with everybody telling me, gosh, you're tough. God, you're a survivor, and so on and so on. I turned myself into a superhero. Look, if that didn't kill me, so I can drink more, right? Every time I get ticked off about something, I can drink more. And trust you me, I'm one of those people who gets annoyed. I got annoyed with all the stuff that was going on in the White House previous to Biden. I get annoyed with the stuff that goes on right now. And I'd like to be active in activism, but what we need to understand and going out there is he goes in to talk about Anthony Bourdain, who I don't know if that's the best example. He did end up committing suicide, but under controlled, he used to be a cocaine and heroin addict. Um, if I remember that correctly. But anyway, in controlled situations, like on his TV show and so on, I mean, he would drink and smoke marijuana, but never drank at home, never drank alone, never drank to cope. No, that I can't find it in here, but I'm pretty sure he mentioned it. Um, uh, does that mean I can drink? Yes, would be the answer. Is anything stopping me? Yes. My self awareness, my promise to God. That's accountability that you can't get in a system with a sponsor or, my sponsor is Jesus. It's the only way I can put it. Um, I don't throw religion in people's face. I don't try and bang their head over it with the Bible. But when I talk about my story, and I mean it, my salvation was Christ. So when everybody says, my miracle, Goodloe, you're a miracle, you're a walking miracle, it used to annoy me, but now the people that used to say that, now, getting this little tizzy about, you know, is my story embellished, so on and so on. It's not. I put all my medical records up on the Facebook place there the other day if anybody cares to look at them. But I don't really want to get into that. It's when what they take away from that when somebody tries to discredit or discount me because they don't like that I'm against the grain. Um, it's a denial of God's miracle, which means that I'm going to have to tweak this around some to get back to what brought me here in the first place. I should have been dead almost 2 years now, and I learn something every day. I would have never imagined how tough the school journey this time would be, and it's because it's so much different than when I was younger, and you know, it's now I bust my tail to get it right, to learn it. If I don't understand something, I'm not looking for a quick way around it, or I'm not looking for, okay, does this get me past an F? I'm looking for actually knowing it. The same as when I read the Bible now. I was just mentioning to a really close friend of mine the other day who's gotten back into Bible study. And it's not necessarily going to be the same way you read it now that it was when you were 18, 19, 20. And and that's why they call it a living Bible. I mean, a lesson in hand right there. So, um, uh, okay. Um, okay, right here it is. So the unhappy 18-year-old who is struggling is not the well adjusted 50-year-old who has worked through many of their problems or who has improved their life circumstances. Vulnerabilities can improve over time. People aren't static, which is what reminds us to never give hope when dealing with someone with an addicted loved one. And that's the hard part. And this goes on to say, no matter how dire the circumstances, um, a lot of people don't. This would fall into the social category of social justice and self awareness. Um, it's simple things like I know right now, in going into the professional life that I'm going into, that I can no longer say alcoholic or drug addict or alcohol abuse or substance abuse. Um, those are not considered very okay anymore, and basically because they're so stigmatized. Um, when you think of alcoholic, you think of somebody who's down, dirty, a mess, and you can't trust them. And that may or may not be true. Some people are fully functioning alcohol use disorders. Um, But some people like me are very non-functioning, and it's because I stayed stuck into a pity party and poor me, and like the old man once told me, pour me another. Um, and that's the way it went. But the coping skills I've developed all came through a process of Christ and therapy and admittance and forgiveness and moving on and reaching that next rung on the letter. Should have taken. I have a sister who does not have any use disorders, but I mean, she's kept climbing her entire life, gives it all back, and she's way high up there in medical stuff now. But she keeps going and she keeps giving back and keeps giving back. It's a phenomenal thing to do. When we stop growing is when we fall. However you want to look at it. I look at it as I failed myself, I failed Christ, and I failed my deceased mother, and so on and so on. You can do that all day long, but if you don't take any actions, that's what's different with me in this walk than a lot of people that I used to be involved with. Is my actions speak for it. I'm pushing to find another way so that we can get down to the nitty gritty of it, which is when I start doing taking patients here one day. Is I really do believe this, and not as much believe it now as I know it. Is that every addiction is going to be a case by case basis. We can't treat everybody in a group setting with a groupthink mentality and expect it to work for everyone. Now, is individualized therapy going to work for everyone? No. It's up to the individual every time if they're there for it. If they're there because they're forced to be there, they're not there for it. It's, when you go to a 12-step meeting, no matter which kind you go to. I mean, it can be Celebrate Recovery, it can be Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, um, and Sex Addicts Anonymous. I mean, all of them. If the person's there because they have to get a court paper signed, they're not there. Majority of the time, they're not there for help. They're there because it's either there or jail. And a lot of that goes on at the rehab facilities now as people are getting out, doing some of the worst things and then getting out of the jail to be on an ankle bracelet in rehab. And honestly, they're just, a lot of them are just a distraction to the reality of it all. And, I used to, what I was trying to be brainwashed into was the fact that I turn the other cheek. People will keep doing wrong. People keep doing wrong. It's okay. Turn the other cheek. That's not. I find it disturbing when people can take a Bible verse and turn it into something to fit their own narrative, and it just gets old. That's all I can say about it. But I'm giving you real advice, good advice, and I am living proof of God's miracle, because it was when I prayed that one day almost 2 years ago. Well, no, not almost 2 years ago. No, that's a little bit farther out. Sorry, but a year and a half ago, when I prayed, I asked for forgiveness, and God lifted me up. I mean, I was immobile. I couldn't even walk at this time, and I had rolled over on the floor to try and will myself into the kitchen. Well, I didn't have any will. Not that could beat, not that could beat God's decisions. And so when I got up and I started moving forward with Christ and through Christ, that's the main reason that I am recovered. And I don't have to keep saying I'm in recovery, because my focus now is not on um, necessarily. It's always in the back of my mind, but my sole focus is not on one day at a time. It's not. It's one lifetime, and with that focus comes, you know, another day with am I and what I'm doing is that is this what God truly wants, or is it what Goodloe truly wants? Um, and sometimes it's tough, but I have to sit there and go, okay, honestly, to sound cliche and completely intended, but what would Jesus do is a good thing to ask yourself when you're going to pick up that next hit from the trap house or anything like that. So yeah, interesting. But I'm going to get off here tonight because I'm trying to shorten to 30 minutes, and I'm going to continue my program on self awareness and social justice. And for the Tyree Nichols in Tennessee, that young man, that's a terrible story, and I do pray for his family and him. And I don't know. I'm not going to add a lot to that. I just find it a tragedy. Then, and what I said on my Facebook thing there is, it's a this is a human on human crime, and we need to quit making it black on black, white on black, white on white. We've got to get to a sense of humanity again, because even like when they talk about the January 6th insurrection, they don't mention all the people who died in that had families, and uh, those people are gone. And we can pray for world peace all day long, or we can take the Bob Marley method and say, give thanks to and praise to the Lord, and it'll be all right. All right. So every week I like to turn to my devotional, and it's the Celebrate Recovery 30-year anniversary 365-day daily devotional. And for day 131, I just open this to a page. I never ever pick this in advance, nothing like it. It usually just somehow, some way, I think I know how, but it fits into whatever's going on with me that day or tonight. So this is John 11:33-35. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see me, Lord. And they replied, Jesus wept. When we encounter recovery, surrendering to God and admitting that our lives are out of control, we find we find that we begin to come out of a condition called denial. Denial is a common coping mechanism that we employ in an effort to keep ourselves safe emotionally. If we can pretend a problem doesn't exist, we don't have to deal with it, and it can't harm us. Of course, the opposite is true. Denial can hurt. Really, it can hurt us as badly by numbing our emotions and keeping us from dealing with problems until they become critical. Um, that was my biggest thing is living in denial, and I denied my past, and yeah, I hid from it, and that was I mean, I drank an amount of alcohol that would kill a normal person, and it did kill me in the end. There's no question about that for anybody new tuning in overseas or anything. I did have to be resuscitated twice during my 3 month hospital stay, my last 3 month hospital stay, because I was in complete liver failure and stage cirrhosis. And again, that's where God steps in and says, I was just told this week, awesome and good news. Because I never talk about it, but I've stayed on a preventative medicine since I was out of the hospital, or precautionary medicine, two of them. Since I got out of the hospital, just in case it was a fluke, just in case okay, he's not supposed to be healing this way. And I've heard that a lot. That it's what was the last one? It's very uncommon for anybody to heal from what I've healed from. And you can look at that for what you want to look at it for. But I've not heard one person in the medical field, the specialists and everything else, say that they understand it. It's supposed to be impossible, but as Zach Williams is saying over here behind me, when I stopped being afraid of the past, that fear, it is a liar. I've heard that in church before as well. And I really became unafraid through all this, and I'm grateful for that. And okay. Denial manifests itself in many ways. Some people turn to shopping, sex, drugs, overeating, inappropriate images, risky relationships, anything that can keep us from facing reality. These problems are then added to the underlying problem, and we are in even more trouble than we were before. In the book of John, we read that Jesus had lost a friend, a man named Lazarus. This man and his two sisters frequently invited Jesus to stay in their home when he was in the area. When Jesus arrived, the two women are crying. He didn't ask them to deny their grief and pretend that they weren't grieving. Just the opposite, he wept along with them. It's always better to face things squarely than to sweep them under the rug. Prayer. Father, it's natural to want to sweep the bad stuff under the rug, but that's not how you taught me. That's not how you taught me to deal with unwelcome circumstances. Thank you for teaching me to deal with the things squarely. In Jesus' name, we pray, amen. That is what I was saying tonight. The most important tool in all this, next to Christ Himself, is your ability and willingness to face your fears. And with that, I wanted to mention this too. This is a book called Eight Things I Wish I Knew Before I Said I Do. And you can't see that really clearly because I couldn't do that. But it's by David Kibler. And he is a pastor at Catalyst Church in Nicholasville, Kentucky. I've made it through about 2 chapters of this so far, and it's a really killer book. And I'll see if he's made up a commercial sometime. But David is a neat guy. He's a good pastor. He tells it like it is, and he's just straight up about everything as they come, and you can ask for anything more in the Word of God. So, with that said, I'm out of here. I thank you all. I thank Endure Entertainment, um, and I will see you all next Saturday night. Until then, adios.